What if two motorcycle crashes, exactly 1 year apart, 3 blocks from each other, both riders 24 years old, weren't accidents but a curse? 7 platinum albums built on brotherhood. Then Duane's slide guitar silenced forever on a Macon street. Barry Oakley riding through that same intersection, searching for his ghost. And the betrayal that destroyed them wasn't death. It was a courtroom testimony that shattered everything they'd survived. This is the tragic destiny of the Allman Brothers Band. The story begins not on a stage, but in the disciplined, soulful atmosphere of Alabama's Muscle Shoals recording studios. Before Duane Allman became the architect of Southern rock, he was earning his reputation as Sky Dog, a session guitarist working alongside legends like Aretha Franklin and Wilson Pickett. Picture this: early 1969, Duane laying down restrained, bluesy guitar, fills behind Aretha's powerhouse vocals. This wasn't the wild improvisation that would later define him. This was precision, discipline, the kind of professional musicianship that separated great players from legends. It was Duane's incredible guitar solo on Wilson Pickett's version of Hey Jude that caught the attention of manager Phil Walden. Walden had built his career managing soul giants like Otis Redding and Sam and Dave. When he heard Duane, he recognized something special, not just talent, but vision. In January 1969, Walden signed Duane to a management contract and invited him to Macon, Georgia. Before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Walden had just founded Capricorn Records with partner Frank Fenter, naming it after their shared astrological sign. With funding and distribution secured through Atlantic Records, Capricorn became the home for Walden's roster of talent, and Duane Allman would be the cornerstone. By March 26, 1969, Duane had assembled the lineup that would change American music forever. His younger brother Greg on vocals and organ, Dickie Betts on guitar, Barry Oakley on bass, and the revolutionary foundation that made their sound truly unique: dual drummers Butch Trucks and J-Mo Johansson. 6 men, 5 Southern white musicians, 1 black drummer. In the racially divided South of 1969, this integrated band was making a statement just by existing together. But they weren't interested in making political statements. They were interested in making music that fused blues, jazz, and country into something entirely new. They called themselves the Allman Brothers Band, and Macon became their home. Not just a business address, but a genuine community. They lived communally, shared everything, and built something that felt bigger than music. It felt like family.
Mama, Daddy, love me. Mama, Daddy, love me.
But the early days were brutal. Their self-titled debut album dropped in November 1969 to critical praise and commercial silence. It sold less than 35,000 copies. Their follow-up, Idlewild South, featuring songs like Midnight Rider, fared only marginally better. What saved them from dissolution was their absolute commitment to the road. In 1970 alone, they played an astounding 300 days. Night after night, city after city, they built their following one sweaty club at a time. And something magical was happening. Audiences were discovering that the studio albums, as good as they were, only captured a fraction of what this band could do live. Their performances were different, extended jams that could stretch 20 minutes or more, but never felt indulgent. The dual drummers created a rhythmic foundation like a freight train, relentless, powerful, impossible to ignore. Duane and Dickie's guitars would weave around each other in perfect conversation, building and releasing tension like great storytellers. And through it all, Greg's voice, raw, emotional, authentic, anchored everything. This wasn't hippie noodling. This was disciplined musical exploration, rooted in the blues precision Duane had learned in those Muscle Shoals sessions. They were drawing increasingly large and rabid crowds who understood they were witnessing something special, but commercial success remained elusive. By 1971, the band faced a crisis. Critical acclaim meant nothing if they couldn't pay their bills. Phil Walden and the band made a radical decision. They would release a double live album as only their 3rd major release. It was a $6 gamble that would either save them or prove they were commercially unviable. The stage was set for their defining moment. March 1971. New York City's legendary Fillmore East, the venue where the greatest live albums in rock history were born. The Allman Brothers Band set up their equipment over 2 nights, determined to capture what their studio work couldn't: the raw electric communion between musicians and audience. When At Fillmore East was released in October 1971, it instantly redefined what a live rock album could be. The recording captured everything that made them special: a 22-minute version of Whipping Post that built from bluesy introspection to explosive catharsis, extended improvisations that showcased both individual virtuosity and collective telepathy, the freight train rhythm section that never wavered.
Oh, Lord, I feel like I'm dying.
Critics declared it the gold standard of blues-based rock and roll. More importantly, it sold. The album catapulted the band to stardom, validating every mile they'd traveled, every small club they'd played, every night they'd poured their hearts out for 50 people who became believers. For their audience, working-class Americans who valued authenticity and hard work, this was vindication. The raw, road-tested experience was superior to the manufactured studio product. The Allman Brothers had proven that substance could triumph over packaging. But Duane Allman's genius extended beyond his own band. Just before the Fillmore sessions, he'd participated in another recording that would cement his legacy among the greatest guitarists who ever lived. Eric Clapton's Derek and the Dominoes needed something special for their album Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs. Clapton, nursing heartbreak over his unrequited love for Pattie Boyd, invited Duane to collaborate. The result was lightning captured as aching sorrow. Duane's slide guitar work on Layla became one of the most recognizable riffs in rock history. His interplay with Clapton throughout the album demonstrated a level of musical communication that transcended technique. It was 2 masters speaking the same language, creating something neither could have achieved alone. The album solidified Duane's status among the highest echelons of guitarists. Just as his own band was achieving its commercial breakthrough, everything was coming together. The Allman Brothers had arrived. Duane Allman was recognized worldwide as one of the greatest guitarists alive. And then, in an instant, it all came crashing down. October 29th, 1971. Just weeks after At Fillmore East was released, Duane Allman was riding his motorcycle through the streets of Macon. He was 24 years old, at the absolute peak of his powers, with everything ahead of him. He lost control, crashed into a flatbed truck, and died. The band's spiritual and musical leader, the man who had envisioned this whole grand experiment, was suddenly, impossibly gone. The founding visionary, who had handpicked each member, who had guided their musical direction, who had been the first to face any challenge, vanished in a single moment of bad luck. The surviving 5 members gathered in their grief to decide the band's future. For Greg Allman, the quieter, shyer younger brother, who had always lived in Duane's shadow, this was an impossible moment, but his words galvanized them. If we don't keep playing, we're liable to wind up on the street. If it had been me, instead of him, I know I would have wanted y'all to keep going and keep trying to attain what we're shooting for here. They found strength in continuing. They released Eat a Peach in February 1972, a hybrid studio and live album that featured Duane's final recorded work. Dickie Betts wrote Ain't Wastin' Time No More as a message to fans that they intended to push forward despite the immense pain. The album was both tribute and defiance, proof that the dream could survive even this. But beneath the professional resilience, bassist Barry Oakley was crumbling. Oakley had been particularly close to Duane, and the loss triggered severe depression. He escalated his use of drugs and alcohol, unable to escape the grief. Bandmates noticed him riding his motorcycle repeatedly through the streets near the site of Duane's crash, as if searching for his brother's spirit. November 11th, 1972. Just 1 year and 13 days after Duane's death, Barry Oakley crashed his motorcycle into a bus in Macon, 3 blocks from where Duane had died. Oakley initially declined medical care, but grew delirious and later died from cerebral swelling caused by a fractured skull. He was 24 years old, the exact same age as Duane. The parallels were impossible to ignore. 2 founding members, both 24. Both motorcycle crashes, both in Macon. within blocks of each other, exactly 1 year apart. For the surviving members, this wasn't just tragedy. It was a curse. The mythology of the Allman Brothers Band was now inseparable from death itself. Duane and Barry were buried side by side at Rose Hill Cemetery, their eternal brotherhood now literal. But here's what's almost impossible to comprehend. The band didn't stop. They kept going, transforming their grief into creative fuel. What came next would be their biggest commercial success, and the beginning of their ultimate unraveling. Most bands wouldn't have survived losing one founding member. The Allman Brothers had lost two. But Gregg Allman, Dickie Betts, Butch Trucks, and Jimo made a conscious decision. They wouldn't try to replace what they'd lost. They would evolve. They brought in two new musicians, Chuck Leavell on piano, who had worked on Gregg's solo album, Laid Back, and Lamar Williams on bass. The new configuration relieved the pressure on any single member to carry the sound alone. Leadership naturally shifted to Dickie Betts, and with that shift came a change in musical direction. Duane's blues-jazz fusion gave way to Betts' more structured country rock influence. The sound was tighter, more radio-friendly, more commercial. In August 1973, they released Brothers and Sisters. The album shot to #1 and stayed there for 5 weeks, eventually going multi-platinum. The breakthrough came from Betts' composition, Ramblin' Man, a polished, radio-ready song that climbed to #2 on the singles chart. Suddenly, the Allman Brothers Band was a top 40 act, playing alongside Neil Diamond and Barry White on the radio. For fans who had discovered them in small clubs or through at Fillmore East, this was both triumph and betrayal. The raw, uncompromising jam band had become a hit-making machine. But here's the cruel irony that would haunt them. Ramblin' Man was kept from #1 by Cher's hit, Half Breed. 2 years later, Gregg Allman would marry that same pop superstar, completing his transformation from Southern rock purist to Hollywood celebrity. The commercial success brought staggering wealth and equally staggering excess. As Gregg later admitted, our roadies had roadies. They bought a private jet that, on its maiden voyage, had "Welcome Allman Brothers" spelled out in cocaine on the bar. Despite earning $80,000 per show, a 41-date tour would leave them nearly broke because the waste was so extreme. The brotherhood that had survived 2 tragic deaths was now being poisoned by money, drugs, and ego. Creative tensions emerged between Betts and Gregg. The down-to-earth Southern rock band was becoming a bloated, excessive rock and roll cliche. And then came the betrayal that would destroy everything. In 1976, a federal investigation into a Georgia drug and corruption ring led the Federal Bureau of Investigation and DEA directly to the Allman Brothers world, their target. John Scooter Herring, Gregg Allman's personal road manager, and the band's drug supplier. Herring was arrested at Capricorn Records, and then the investigators came for Gregg. Facing threats of perjury charges and a potential 3 to 5 year prison sentence, Gregg was offered an immunity deal. All he had to do was testify against Herring, his friend, his employee, the man who had been part of their inner circle. Terrified and alone, Gregg agreed. This decision, choosing self-preservation over the rock and roll code of loyalty and silence, was perceived by the rest of the band as the ultimate betrayal. In their eyes, Gregg had violated the fundamental principle that had sustained them through tragedy. You protect the family, no matter what. The Federal Bureau of Investigation placed Gregg in protective custody due to threats. He became known as a narc and an informant. The band that had survived Duane's death, Barry's death, and years of grinding poverty couldn't survive this. Dickie Betts delivered the final verdict. There is no way we can work with Gregg Allman again. Ever. In August 1976, the Allman Brothers Band broke up. Not because of tragedy, not because of creative differences, but because trust, the invisible foundation of their brotherhood, had been shattered beyond repair. The band that had been forged in a communal house in Macon, that had survived 2 fatal motorcycle crashes, that had achieved 7 platinum albums, was finally killed by internal betrayal under the pressures of fame and addiction. The family was destroyed. The 1980s were a wasteland of unstable reunions and false starts. But by the early 1990s, something remarkable happened. the Allman Brothers Band found redemption. They established an annual residency at the Beacon Theater in New York City, a modern spiritual successor to the Fillmore East. These shows became legendary, extended jams, revolving set lists drawing from over 100 songs. Guest appearances, the ethos of improvisation and communion with the audience was restored. The late-era lineup, featuring guitarists Warren Haynes and Derek Trucks, nephew of drummer Butch Trucks, was praised for channeling the spirit of the original band. Derek's slide guitar work, in particular, seemed to channel Duane's ghost. Haynes filled the emotional space once held by the interplay between Greg and Dickie. For fans, this wasn't nostalgia. This was the real thing, reborn. But for Greg Allman personally, redemption came harder. In 1995, the band was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the ultimate validation of their legacy. It should have been the greatest moment of his life. Instead, Greg later confessed he hit an all-time low. He arrived in New York and stayed drunk for 5 days. During television appearances, he looked puffy and bloated. At the induction ceremony itself, presenter Willie Nelson had to ask, "You all right, Gregory?" Unable to deliver his prepared acceptance speech, Greg managed only a slurred dedication. "This is for my brother. He was always the first to face the fire. He was my greatest motivation." He flat out missed the most pivotal moment of his career due to intoxication. But that public failure became his wake-up call, leading to his eventual commitment to sobriety. Even in death, Duane served as the catalyst for his younger brother's redemption. After decades of touring, the band chose its own ending. In October 2014, they played their final concert at the Beacon Theater. The setlist was a conscious journey through their history, beginning with Duane's acoustic piece, Little Martha, and culminating in a 16-minute version of Whipping Post. Unlike the tragic accidental deaths of Duane and Barry, or the bitter implosion of 1976, the 2014 show ended with farewell speeches and dignity. The band that had been shattered 40 years earlier finally retired with their brotherhood intact. The Allman Brothers Band proved that authentic American music, rooted in blues, forged through discipline, and delivered with uncompromising passion, could conquer the world. But they also revealed the cost. 2 brothers dead at 24. A family torn apart by betrayal, decades of addiction and redemption. Their 7 platinum albums remain monuments to what they achieved together. Their broken brotherhood reminds us that even family can fracture under fame's weight. What's your memory of the Allman Brothers? Drop it in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from rock's greatest era.